What up, dude bros? I'm Frank. This is a video review of the Adventure Force TriggerFire. The TriggerFire is a spring-powered semi-auto 30-round capacity blaster with a very unique firing system. There's no priming handle, you just pull on the trigger repeatedly and it fires in semi-auto as a springer. It's similar to the Alien Menace Voidcaster and the Zombie Strike Nailbiter in this way. Interesting blaster, let's get into it. Included is the blaster, detached drum, scope, and darts. Assembly requires a great deal of patience. Use a mallet at your own risk. External overview of the TriggerFire, starting up at the front. Of course, there's no in-strike barrel lug. This looks like a tactical rail, but it's not. Moving back to the drum, the capacity of the TriggerFire is 30 darts. It includes these nipple-style darts, but it is also compatible with Nerf Elite darts. To load, you very simply just front load like that, and again, the capacity is 30 darts. This drum was really annoying to install, and it is not designed to be quickly removed at all. So once it's in there, it's built to stay in there, and yes, you could technically pull this rod out, but I really don't recommend it. I only took it out and put it back in like twice, and I already think this system might fail. So it's in there, I'm not going to touch it anymore, and it hasn't broken, but it's not a very well-built mechanical system here. This whole blaster just feels cheap, but it is Busby, and that's kind of to be expected. I'm not trying to shame Busby, but they consistently use lower quality plastic, and the fit and finish of this product is just not in line with Hasbro or Dart Zone. Moving back, here's the included scope. It's not going to help you aim, but it looks kind of cool. And this is a proprietary rail. Your Nerf attachments will not fit onto this. So you put your goofy little scope onto the goofy little blaster. Now down to the trigger and the priming action, which is the most unique part of this whole blaster. This is a spring-powered blaster that is semi-automatic. The priming handle is also the trigger. So to rotate the cylinder, to prime back the spring, and to fire, all you do is pull back on the trigger. The trigger part of the grip is gigantic. You're supposed to use all 4 of your fingers to pull in really hard, not just your firing finger. And this trigger pull is not standard at all. It's a very unique trigger pull because you're priming the spring back and firing all in one motion. And because of that, it's obviously way harder to pull this trigger than a normal trigger. If you're just firing off 1 cylinder of ammo, it's pretty reasonable, but if you want to quickly fire, my hand actually fatigued. So it's very unique. It's the coolest part of this blaster, but it's also the biggest flaw of this blaster, which I'll get into in my opinion. Now to the grip itself, it's an oversized grip, which is welcoming to a larger hand, but it's not going to alienate a small hand. That being said, if you do have a smaller hand, you're going to have a really hard time pulling this trigger more than 30 times. Your hand is just going to wear out. I have a fully grown adult hand, and my hand wore out really fast. But outside of the trigger pull, the grip is actually pretty comfortable just to hold the blaster. But no stock attachment point, no sling or lanyard mount. That is an external overview of the TriggerFire. Now I will show you firing. Starting with the included nipple head style darts. Now shooting some Nerf Elite darts. Operating the TriggerFire is a very unique experience. It's one of very few spring-powered semi-automatic blasters available. Shooting it is weird. You're priming it and shooting it all with your hand. Like I said, after you shoot about 60 rounds, which is 2 cylinders, my hand wore out and it gets tiring. Mechanically, it works just fine. I did not have any jams or malfunctions because of the mechanics. But as I started to fatigue, I did start to short stroke the trigger a little bit more and I would skip darts. Skipping darts is not as bad as a jam or an actual malfunction, but it is worth noting. Other than that hiccup, I did not experience any jams or malfunctions or notable performance issues. To compare this blaster to others, I put it up on my chronograph, and with the included nipplehead style darts, I achieved an average velocity of 54 feet per second, and with Nerf Elite darts, 55 feet per second. This is noticeably slower than a 70 FPS Elite par, so the muzzle velocity is way slower than most blasters out on the market. In this blaster's defense, the Alien Menace Voidcaster and the Zombie Strike Nailbiter also shoot below the 70 FPS average, and that's most likely due to this priming mechanism. If you made it any stronger, it would be such a hardcore workout that it would be unusable. I got fatigued after shooting just 2 cylinders. I'd have to take a break or switch to my left hand to keep firing. firing. If this shot 70 FPS because of a bigger spring, the trigger pull would be that much harder to pull and it would be unusable. So it shoots way softer than everything else on the market, but it makes sense why. That is the objective information I can provide on this blaster. Now to my personal opinion. My opinion on this one is pretty mixed. Now mechanically it works okay and did not have any mechanical jams or malfunctions. So I think Busby did a good job at what they set out to do. My argument against this blaster is just the philosophy of use. It doesn't serve any real purpose. If you want to shoot high capacity, semi-automatic, I just argue you have to go buy a battery-powered blaster. You can't use a Springer and try to make it into a battery-powered blaster. It just doesn't work. The 55 FPS muzzle velocity is simply too slow in today's Nerf world. The 70 FPS Elite Par is still shooting pretty low compared to Dart Zone, compared to Rival, compared to other blasters out on the market. And beyond the performance, it gets exhausting. It's like emotionally taxing to use this blaster shooting it more than 60 or 90 times. It's not that it takes a ridiculous amount of force. The spring in there is not that strong, but it has to be primed with your hand muscles. Typically, when you prime something, you're using your whole arm. You're using the pump action with your bicep, your tricep, your bigger muscles. Your forearm and finger muscles are just weaker. It gets really tiring to use this blaster. However, the blaster does what it sets out to do, so my issues with this are not because of the mechanical performance. It's really just the philosophy of use. I think this is attempting to be a hybrid between the Springer and the battery-powered world. It wants to have the rate of fire of a battery-powered blaster without using batteries. Now, if you want to run semi-auto, just go buy a battery-powered blaster. That's the solution here. I'm not saying battery-powered blasters are always better than Springers. Of course, Springers will always have a place in our hobby. The philosophy of this blaster is just in between two worlds, and it doesn't really do a good job at either. Reminds me of that new Jeep. It's not a good Jeep, and it's not a good pickup truck. What does it accomplish? If you want a Jeep, buy a Jeep. If you want a truck, buy a truck. But by trying to accomplish two roles that are sort of mutually exclusive, you fail at both. That is exactly what's happening here. If you want a Springer, buy a Springer. If you want an electric gun, like a flywheeler, go buy one of those. It tries to be the best of both worlds and sort of fails at both. That's a really negative opinion on a blaster that is mechanically functional. It does what Busby says it does. So I feel bad being so nasty to a blaster that works. But that transitions into the question to buy or not to buy. I really don't think this blaster is going to make anybody happy. It's really tiring to use, and it tries to be something that it's not. If you want a semi-auto blaster, you're going to have to buy a battery-powered blaster or an air gun with an air tank. But this mechanism, while it is mechanically cool and very awesome that they pulled it off as well as they did, just doesn't seem to fill any good role. I think you'll be much happier with a full-on Springer like an Alpha Trooper or a full-on electric gun like a Strife or a Rapid Strike. This tries to do both and really doesn't succeed at either, unfortunately. So the buy recommendation is negative. I don't think you should go out and buy this one. And the cosmetics. Golly, who picked these colors? This looks disgusting. They don't even match. Like, wow. But that's entirely subjective. Hopefully I laid out everything you need to make an educated purchase decision on your own. If you'd like to buy one of these, I'll put a purchase link in the description box below. That's it for this video. Thanks so much for watching, bros, and as always, stay tactical.